The old king was dying. Not from the arrow lodged in his chest, nor from the poison his enemies had whispered into his goblet weeks ago. No. King Alaric of Irinder was dying because the crown itself had decided his time was over. The chamber was lit only by trembling candlelight, shadows stretching across the carved stone walls like vultures waiting for flesh to fall. His breath was ragged, each inhale pulling the smell of old incense and wet stone deeper into his lungs. Servants whispered beyond the door, but none dared enter. Upon the table beside his bed lay the crown of Irinder, a circlet of black and gold, studded with 7 blood-red rubies. Legends claimed it had been forged from the spine of the first dragon slain by Irinder's founder, and that the rubies were the beast's crystallized heart fragments. The truth was darker: the crown chose its kings, and it devoured them when their rule no longer served its will. Alaric knew this. He had felt the weight of its whispers for decades, a voice in his mind that told him when to wage war, when to show mercy, and when to kill his own blood. Every king before him had died the same way, abandoned by the crown they thought they wore. He reached for it now, his trembling fingers brushing the cold metal. The moment his skin touched it, a shiver like ice raced up his arm. "You have ruled long enough, Alaric," the crown's voice hissed in his mind. "Your heart is heavy, your will is weak. Another shall take your throne." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Who?" "My son. He is not ready. He will destroy everything." The rubies seemed to pulse with faint red light. Then perhaps that is what must happen. The old king tried to stand, but the shadows in the room deepened, pressing against him like water. The air turned colder. Beyond the chamber, a storm was rising, not of rain, but of steel and betrayal. For the first time in decades, fear gripped King Alaric's heart. Not fear of death, but fear of what the crown would demand next. Because he knew one truth above all: the crown did not leave its kings to die alone. It always took one last thing from them before the end. And as the door to his chamber creaked open and a familiar figure stepped inside, sword dripping red, the king realized exactly what the crown wanted. The figure in the doorway was his eldest son, Prince Calin. The boy, no, the man, had his mother's pale eyes and his father's sharp jawline, but there was something else in his expression now. Not grief. Not worry. It was calculation, and hunger. "Father," Calin said softly, his voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "You look unwell." Alaric forced himself upright, the arrow in his chest grinding against bone. "What have you done?" Calin stepped forward, the candlelight catching on the dark crimson staining his blade. What was necessary? The council was divided. The generals, stubborn. They would have torn the kingdom apart after your death. After my death. Alaric spat the word. "You speak as though I am already gone." The prince's gaze flicked to the crown on the table. "You are. We both know it. The crown has already chosen." At those words, Alaric's fingers instinctively moved to shield the relic, but the metal seemed to grow heavier, as if resisting him. The rubies pulsed again, faster now, as though the crown itself was impatient. "He is mine," the voice whispered in Alaric's skull, but it was not speaking to him anymore. It was speaking to Calin. The storm outside cracked open the sky with lightning. For a moment, the entire chamber was bathed in silver light, and Alaric saw something that chilled his blood far more than the wound in his chest. Calin's shadow did not match his body. It was taller, its head crowned with twisted horns, and its fingers ended in claws. "You've been speaking to it," Alaric whispered, horror creeping into his voice. "You've let it in." Calin's lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. "It came to me, father. It told me the truth, that you were weak, that the kingdom stagnates under your rule. I will finish what you could not. Alaric's mind spun. He had been preparing Kaelin for the throne, but never like this. Never with the crown already whispering in his ear. The last time the relic had passed to a king so young, Irinder had burned for 30 years. I will not let you, the king tried to stand, but his body betrayed him. Pain lanced through his chest, forcing him back to the bed. Kaelin took another step forward, eyes locked on the crown. The shadows in the chamber seemed to bend toward him, curling like black smoke around his boots. Give it to me, the voice demanded in Alaric's head, and he could hear the echo of it in his son's. With the last of his strength, Alaric reached beneath his pillow and pulled free a small, leather-wrapped dagger. Its blade was etched with runes older than the kingdom itself, and the metal shimmered faintly even in the dim candlelight. The prince froze. That dagger. Alaric's grip tightened. Forged by the first king's hand, meant to cut the bond between crown and bearer. I swore I would never use it, but I see now, mercy has no place in a dying king's heart. The crown's voice turned to a furious hiss. Do this, and you will damn us all. Alaric ignored it. Summoning a burst of strength from somewhere deep within, perhaps from the same stubborn pride that had kept him on the throne for 50 years, he lunged forward. The dagger's tip grazed Kaelin's chest, but the prince was fast. His sword swung down, knocking the weapon from his father's hand. The dagger clattered across the stone floor, coming to rest beside the crown. The two relics lay inches apart, and the air between them seemed to ripple, like heat above desert sands. Kaelin's eyes flicked between them, and then he made his choice. He reached for the crown. No! Alaric roared, hurling himself from the bed. The arrow tore deeper into his flesh, white-hot pain blinding him. His fingers closed around the crown just as Kaelin's did. The instant their hands touched the same metal, the world around them vanished. They were no longer in the chamber, but standing on a vast plain of black stone beneath a sky the color of dying embers. Towers of bone rose in the distance, and a single colossal figure loomed before them, faceless, robed in tattered shadows, its hands clutching a massive, twisted crown identical to the one they held. The voice that had whispered in Alaric's mind for decades now boomed like thunder across the plain. Two claimants. One throne. One must die here, in my realm, and the other shall rule until I hunger again. Kaelin's grin was wild now, his eyes burning with a light not entirely his own. Then it will be you, father. Alaric's grip tightened. His body in the mortal world was weak and broken, but here, in this place, he felt something else stirring. The memories of every battle he had fought, every blade he had lifted, every drop of blood spilled for Irinder surged through him. Come then, boy, he growled. Let's see if the crown has chosen well. And as the black plain trembled beneath their feet, father and son lunged at each other, steel singing, the fate of Irinder balanced on the edge of a blade. The black plain cracked beneath their feet, splitting into jagged fissures that glowed with molten light. Far above, the ember-colored sky churned like a dying fire, and the towers of bone shuddered as if sensing blood would soon be spilled. Kaelin moved first, his blade flashing in an arc of silver that hissed as it cut through the air. Alaric caught the strike with his forearm, the impact ringing through his bones like the toll of a great bell. Pain flared, but here in the crown's realm, pain only fed the will to fight. You've grown strong, Alaric said through clenched teeth, pushing the blade aside and answering with a sweeping cut of his own. Too strong for a son who was supposed to learn patience before power. Kaelin smirked, sidestepping the blow. Patience builds weak kings. The crown showed me that. They circled each other, shadows stretching long across the plain. Each step stirred echoes, whispers in a dozen voices, as though the ghosts of every king before them were watching. Alaric knew those voices. He had heard them in dreams, men who had ruled for centuries past, whose bones now lay beneath Arinder's royal crypt. But their tones now were not of guidance, they were hungry. Kill him, spill his blood on the stones, feed the crown. Lightning slashed across the ember sky, and for an instant, Kaelin's face shifted, no longer entirely human. His eyes glowed like molten rubies, his cheekbones sharpened into cruel ridges, and something like scales glimmered along his jaw. Alaric's stomach turned. The crown's hunger had already sunk deep into his son's soul. If Kaelin left this place alive, the kingdom would not survive a decade. The next clash was brutal. Steel rang on steel, sparks flaring. Kaelin's strength was raw and vicious, every strike aimed to end the fight in a single blow. Alaric's defense was measured, tempered by decades of war. He parried, twisted, and countered, each motion conserving energy, waiting for the moment to strike true. But the crown was not patient. Its voice roared in both their skulls now. Strike! Bleed him! Only one of you may leave. The ground beneath them split wider, the molten light brightening into an infernal glare. From the cracks, black shapes began to crawl forth, skeletal warriors with horns of twisted iron, their hollow eye sockets burning faintly red. They encircled the duel, their bone fingers clutching rusted spears. Kaelin grinned wider. It calls the witnesses. Alaric's jaw tightened. He had seen these before, the shades of the crown. They appeared only when a king's reign was truly at its end. Kaelin lunged again, forcing Alaric backward toward the ring of bone warriors. Alaric sidestepped at the last moment, letting Kaelin's momentum carry him too far. With a swift pivot, he brought his blade down, only for Kaelin to twist away, faster than expected. Their swords locked again, faces inches apart. You were never going to give it to me, Kaelin growled. Even if I earned it. You would have clung to it until it rotted you from the inside. I would have given it when you were ready, Alaric snapped back. But now I see you never would have been. Kaelin's eyes flared. Then die knowing your son will burn your precious Arinder to ash. He broke the lock and swung low. The blade bit into Alaric's thigh, a deep, hot pain that made the old king stumble. Kaelin moved in for the killing stroke. But before the blade could fall, the shades surged forward. They did not strike either man. Instead, they drove their spears into the ground, forming a cage of bone around the duelists. Black smoke poured from the earth, wrapping around both fighters, and in the smoke, visions began to appear. Alaric saw Kaelin as a boy, running through the palace gardens, laughing as his mother chased him. Then the image shifted, Kaelin standing over the body of a servant, a dagger in his young hand, his eyes already distant and cold. Kaelin's vision twisted differently, his father on a throne of gold, surrounded by starving villagers kept at bay by guards with bloody spears. The crown gleamed on Alaric's head, whispering commands Kaelin could almost hear even now. The visions pulled at them, warping their resolve. This is the truth, Kaelin said, breathing hard. You've hidden it all my life, the blood this kingdom was built on. And you think you will build it better with more blood? Alaric spat. That's not the crown talking anymore, Kaelin. That's you. The shades tightened their circle, forcing them closer. The crown's colossal guardian, the faceless figure looming over the plain, spoke again, its voice shaking the ground. Choose your victor, and end the other. The kingdom waits. Kaelin roared and swung again, but Alaric met the blow head-on. The clash rattled the cage of bone, sparks hissing into the smoke. For a heartbeat, they were locked again, eyes blazing. Then Alaric saw his chance. Dropping his blade, he lunged forward, seizing Kaelin's wrist. With his free hand, he yanked the crown between them. Its blackened gold burned against their skin, and both cried out as the world around them shattered into blinding light. When the light faded, they were back in the mortal realm, the bedchamber dim, the storm still raging outside. But they were not alone. Standing by the window was a woman in tattered white robes, her face hidden beneath a hood. Her voice was cold and low. "So, the crown's hunger has brought me another choice." Kaelin stepped back, eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" She ignored him, turning her gaze to Alaric. "I am the crown's first queen, and its last prisoner." The air grew colder still, and Alaric understood something then: the duel was not the end. It was only the beginning of a far older game. The woman in tattered white stepped into the candlelight, her shadow stretching unnaturally long across the stone floor. Her hood slipped slightly, revealing skin pale as moonlight and eyes that shimmered like frozen silver. "I ruled Arinder before it was called Arinder," she said. Her voice was neither young nor old, but carried the weight of centuries. "I forged the first pact with the crown, not in gold, but in blood." Alaric felt the words sink into him like icy water. "The Founder's Queen, that's impossible. You'd be dead?" Her lips curled faintly. "I was. Until the crown took me. It does not merely feed on kings. It keeps the first bearer alive, bound to it, so it may whisper, so it may tempt, so it may guide, and destroy." Kaelin's fingers tightened around his sword. "If you're its prisoner, then help me destroy it." She turned to him slowly, and for the first time, her expression shifted, not with pity, but with hunger. "Oh, child. You do not want to destroy it. You want to wear it." Kaelin didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. The queen's gaze returned to Alaric. "The duel the crown forces is a lie. Win or lose, it feeds. The victor is merely the next vessel. The only way to end the cycle is to return the crown to where it was forged, to the heart of the dragon's tomb, far beneath the Black Mountains." Alaric's breath caught. He knew the place, a cavern forbidden for generations, sealed by royal decree. "And you think I'll trust you to lead us there?" "I don't need your trust," she said, stepping closer. "I only need your desperation." Kaelin's patience snapped. "Enough riddles." He lunged, blade raised, but before he could strike, the queen's hand shot up, her palm bare. The sword stopped in midair, frozen as though caught in invisible chains. Kaelin's eyes widened as he was forced to his knees. "What are you?" "The first servant of the crown," she whispered. "And the last who remembers the truth." Alaric's mind churned. Every king before him had heard whispers. Every king had died young, leaving the kingdom in chaos. And all this time, the queen, the crown's first queen, had been watching, feeding it, guiding its hunger. "Why tell me now?" he demanded. Her silver eyes locked on his. "Because the crown grows weak when it is contested by blood. Father and son both bearing its touch at the same time, it tears at the binding. If you wish to free Arinder, you must kill him before the crown can claim you both." The words hit like a blade to the gut. Kill his son. Kill Kaelin. For a long moment, the storm outside filled the silence, the wind screaming against the stone walls. Kaelin stared at his father, breathing hard, sweat on his brow. "She's lying. She wants you to finish me so she can keep it for herself." Alaric looked between them, torn. The crown pulsed on the table, its rubies glowing faintly like coals. In his mind, the whisper came again, not in rage this time, but almost coaxing. "You have ruled long enough. End him. Take your rest." The thought sickened him, but the truth was there, the crown's will was breaking him. He made his choice. In one swift motion, Alaric snatched the dagger from the floor, the same rune blade meant to cut the crown's bond, and lunged at the queen. She moved faster than seemed possible, but not fast enough. The dagger bit into her side, and a shriek tore from her lips that shook the stones. The crown screamed in his mind, the sound like molten metal poured into his ears. Kalen stumbled to his feet, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" Ending this, Alaric growled. The queen's form wavered, her skin cracking like porcelain. Black smoke poured from the wounds, twisting toward the crown. The rubies flared brighter, almost blinding. Alaric grabbed the crown in one hand and the dagger in the other. "If the heart of the dragon is where you were forged," he muttered, "then the heart of the king will be where you end." Kalen stepped forward. "Father." But Alaric didn't wait. He raised the crown high, and drove the dagger straight through it. The world exploded. The chamber dissolved into darkness, the air thick and suffocating. Alaric was back on the black plain, the towers of bone collapsing in the distance. The colossal faceless guardian writhed, its massive crown shattering piece by piece. The shades screamed, their forms turning to ash in the molten cracks. Kalen was there too, clutching his head. "What have you done?" Alaric staggered forward. "I've freed us." But freedom was not what the crown intended. The guardian's voice roared one last time, shaking the dying plain. "If I cannot rule through you, then I will take you with me." The ground gave way beneath their feet. The molten glow swallowed the sky, and the heat roared up like the breath of the first dragon. Alaric felt Kalen's hand, not in hatred now, but in desperation, grabbing his arm. For a moment, father and son stood together against the abyss. Then Alaric made his final choice. He shoved Kalen backward toward the light that had appeared above, the way out. "Rule well," he said, voice raw. "Better than I did." Kalen's face twisted, anger, confusion, maybe even grief, and then he was gone, pulled into the light. The plane collapsed entirely. The guardian's scream became nothing but wind. Kalen awoke on the floor of the royal chamber, the storm gone, the crown shattered beside him. His father's body was nowhere to be found. For the first time in his life, there was no whisper in his mind. But in the silence, he thought he heard, far away, a voice. Not the crown's, but his father's. "The crown is gone. The hunger remains. Guard yourself, Kalen. For hunger always finds a new shape." Kalen stood slowly, the weight of the throne pressing on him already. The kingdom was his, but so were his father's final words. And as he stepped toward the window, looking out over the darkened city of Arinder, he wondered whether he had truly been freed, or merely become the crown's hunger in another form.